right. Now joined by Forrest, of course, and also by my good friend David Slavick, and by my comrade Kenzo Shibata, who I've been on his show, but this is the first time he's returned the favor. So do better, Kenzo. And we are going to be talking about the Daily Beast's hit piece directed allegedly at something called the Dirtbag Left. Wanted to say a few things before we get started. One of them is to apologize about the late start. Blame David Feldman. It's his fault. Direct all complaints at him. Yeah, I won Feldman earlier, and we did go late, but it's not his fault at all. And also, we are. I think Forrest is going to keep it going after I leave because I am going to have to leave in about 40 minutes. Going to go talk to the CMU Philosophy Club on Zoom, obviously.
I thought you were going to say you had to go talk to the CIA, and I was going to
yeah. No. Bhaskar tells me that we can't talk about the CIA stuff at the on YouTube. The Langley doesn't like it.
Oh, all right. You're going to get a nasty worded email.
Yeah, that's right. have to have a talk with CIA HR. So.
Oh God, CIA racial bias training would be the funniest bit.
They've been doing it essentially online. They've had new branding, they've had new formations, et cetera, et cetera. I think they're going to claim they're an anti-colonial force at this point.
Well, the royal family seems to have claimed to be an colonial force at this point today.
Yeah, Nigel Farage said they've done more for people of color than any other institution.
Nigel Farage is pink, so I guess he is a person of color.
The Twitter trending thing today, when it was like Prince William says royal family not racist, they had to make sure that there was like a black woman in a mask behind them.
Now
There's
Andrew while we're at it.
Yeah, right. Wait a second. I get my royals mixed up. Is he the one who was on the Epstein flight logs? Yeah. So he claimed that he had a special disease that he couldn't sweat, which was because like in the description of him. From one of the victims, he said he'd been sweating profusely. It's like, no, I have a disease. I can't sweat. He was actually sweating in the interview. And then when it was pointed out, he was like, oh, yeah, I got over it. It's like,
do you know why he said that it was the case? Is because he was in the Falklands War, which was an imperial war. It's literally stealing, property from South Americans. But there you go.
Yeah, right. He lost his sweat glands for his country, and now we're going to cast aspersions to him based merely on the fact that he liked to hang out on Pedophile Island. There's lots of stuff going on Pedophile Island. Besides,
when they took his sweat glands, they also took his pineal gland, and now he can't see age. You know what I mean?
Well, that's why he
can't tell how old anybody is, and.
I wonder if Dershowitz is the one who coached him in overselling things. Dershowitz who's like, I don't even like massages. Ask anyone.
Well, I have a true confession. My wife has been to Dershowitz's house for dinner.
Oh wow!
And I'll be honest with you, when dinner's not good at our house, sometimes she does overcomplain.
Yeah.
I was listening to the debate that he did with Norman Finkelstein, the Israel debate, because it kind of comes up later in this article when they're talking about Truanon interviewing Norman Finkelstein, and then without mentioning Dershowitz, they kind of bring up his smear that he was a Holocaust denier, despite the fact that the entire interview is about how much it hurt that his family died in the Holocaust, and then Alan Dershowitz called him a Holocaust denier.
Yeah, so this is one of the things I did want to make sure I brought up. I know you've got a whole thing planned out for this, but just because I am going to have to leave early, just in case we don't get to it in the normal course of things, I want to because this is something. This whole article, and look, it's not surprising. the Daily Beast has a history of this kind of thing. Like last year, they literally ran a story. I'm not making this up. About Russia infiltrating Jacobin.
Trying to infiltrate. They were clear.
Yeah, the headline was like Russia tries to, I don't even know if tries was even in the headline, but whatever. It was like about Russia trying to infiltrate Jacobin, and what they meant was somebody from a Russian troll farm submitting an article to Jacobin that like they never even got a reply to the email.
Tried is in the leaked documents show Russian trolls tried to infiltrate left-wing media.
Yeah, in these times too, Jacobin and in these times, but like, like that's pretty amazing, right? Like I have like we could, it could be like we could all like submit like poorly, like as ungrammatical and weird as I'm sure these Russian troll farm submissions to Jacobin were. Like we could all like submit stuff like that to the New York Times tomorrow, and it could be left-wing podcast tries to infiltrate the New York Times. I mean, I don't know what that's supposed to prove.
Actually, let's get that together. I'll create a Google Doc.
Yeah.
Well, the
other thing I was going to say though,
yeah,
is that this Finkelstein thing that you're talking about, like, is one of the things that pissed me off the most. Like the entire article is just nothing but like 12 degrees of separation, guilt by association. This person was on this podcast, but they were also on this other podcast. And so by a transitivity of badness, the first podcast is bad. And, the person on the first podcast co-hosts a third one with somebody else who said this thing. But the Finkelstein one was particularly shameless. So, and this is just like a thing that I happen to know. I mean, like I could imagine like 999 out of 1,000 readers, like not, like just reading this example and being like, I don't know, maybe that sounds bad. They said Finkelstein was that and they were using Finkelstein as like guilt by association thing because of some show he went on or whatever.
Yeah, and he went on TrueAnon a few weeks ago. Yeah,
and they said, well, Finkelstein said of David Irving, as a Holocaust denier, that he was actually a good historian, and he didn't know what it meant, call somebody a Holocaust denier. So, starting with the second half of that statement, like Norman Finkelstein's family was wiped out in the Holocaust. I'm pretty sure he's not a Holocaust denier. Yeah. Like that's like. I don't know the full context of the second half of that quote. My guess is that it was something like, based on how the phrase Holocaust denier is being thrown around by people like Alan Dershowitz, I don't even know what they mean. Mm-hmm. But as far as the first half, the thing about David Irving actually being a pretty good historian, David Irving, now, as I understand it, he has some, fascisty views, and those were expressed more and more as his books went on, like, especially the later ones. But he actually is a good historian, and he wrote some like widely respected books early on. And and I just happened to it just happens to be the case that a couple of weeks ago I read Christopher Hitchens' essay on Winston Churchill at the beginning of Love, Poverty, and War, where he says, like, he's talking about people who are like, big critics of Churchill and Britain in the war. And he talks about, David Irving, and I don't consider anybody to really have, like, he says something like, I don't consider anybody to have a handle on this debate if they haven't read David Irving. And I mean, I don't know, maybe Christopher Hitchens is a Holocaust denier. I have to say, this will be the first time I've heard that particular accusation made. It's just like, again, but if you're just reading this, all you're supposed to see is Holocaust denier, Norman Finkelstein, TrueAnon. Therefore, TrueAnon is like tarred by association with somebody who's praising a Holocaust denier.
Yeah. So, just for the record, Brace Belden, Jewish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. like many people on the left, Brace is comes from a family of left-wing Jews, and it's like one of those things where you think,
as does Norman Finkelstein.
Norman Finkelstein is kind of the prototype, and you can see that people who, he's done his research. He cares about the topic, clearly has a personal impact. I think that's what's interesting is that people are borrowing other people's troubles to demean people who actually have those troubles. And I think that's interesting.
No, yeah. I mean, it's extremely interesting that they would, because again, yeah. So left-wing Jewish host interviewing left-wing Jewish guest who said, by the way, not even on TrueAnon, right? It's not like he said this on TrueAnon. It's that he has elsewhere said that somebody was a pretty good historian, and it just seems like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe let's just say, for the sake of argument, that if you read the full context of Norman Finkelstein's remarks, he was denying that his family died in the Holocaust. I really doubt it. But even if that were the case, then it's still bizarre that, like, okay, so what's the normative claim here exactly? That, like, TrueAnon shouldn't have had him on because he did this, that because TrueAnon did that, they interviewed somebody who in some other context said this. You think like that means that TrueAnon is like Holocaust denial-ish?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's worth noting also the wider context of the Holocaust denier thing as applied to Norman Finkelstein, because it's not like he made this up. That claim is the Alan Dershowitz claim, and it comes after he and Alan Dershowitz got into this debate on Democracy Now!, which is what his interview with TrueAnon was about how this was weaponized against him, and it got to the point where he was pretty much canceled and blacklisted from the educational establishment, like the academic establishment, so much that he couldn't even get a job volunteering at a high school, because Alan Dershowitz had made this claim about him. And it comes from his book, The Holocaust Industry, which is a book about how, like, pro-Israel forces have kind of weaponized the Holocaust as a way to like gain their geopolitical power from it. And Alan Dershowitz, without kind of any without corroborating it in any way, puts on this website, that on the Harvard website, I think, that Norman Finkelstein is a Holocaust denier, and gets him blacklisted from pretty much every academic association possible.
Yeah.
What they're doing in here, I see a lot of, is equating anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism without actually saying it, but also kind of laying down. I really do see this as like a trial balloon, this article, to see if like they can get away with this much egregious messaging and like such tepid like connections between each of these people. Like, one of the things that I really got out of this is it made me think of like moral panics more than anything else, and like political analysis. Like, I think of like the trial of the Chicago 7, how they lumped together the Panthers with SDS and the Yippies, because they're essentially just putting the counterculture on trial at that point. And these were groups that kind of hated each other and didn't want to be lumped in with each other. And I see the same thing in this article. Like, and I do see like kind of a backdoor way of bolstering that argument of anti-Semitism being anti-Zionism without saying it, and using this cloak of a moral panic about this, the right wing sneaking its way through left wing podcasts.
Yeah, and I think that there's trying to say, like, to imply a lot of stuff without saying it in here, and I think I also agree, Kenzo, with part of what you're saying about like how wide a net is being cast. And this is the other thing I wanted to make sure that I said while I was on here, because they're doing something like really strange. Because this term "dirtbag left," this comes from our friend and also, by the way, if we're doing guilt by association, for repeat former guest on the show, Amber Frost, who coined that, I think, back in 2016, and what she meant by it, as I always understood it, was basically just a aesthetic thing, right? It's like because it's not like 2016 Chapo believed anything that like 2016 Jacobin didn't believe, right? It's that whereas Jacobin is very sort of like in presentation, very kind of clean and respectable, right? That what they're talking about is basically, being like irreverent and not and sort of not worried about like, coming off in a respectable way, and
which is what gets under the skin of outlets like the Daily Beast, I think, because the interviews that like Chapo or like as much as they're kind of at times like a comedy podcast, you know what I mean? Like the interviews that they do, or like TrueAnon does, or like anybody like Red Scare did with Steve Bannon, like the way that like a lot of times that they get to the bottom of things is so much more incisive than the way that something like the Daily Beast would, or like any mainstream outlet. So gatekeeping is a big part of this whole thing.
Yeah, right. But I mean, the point is just that, like, Dirtbag Left, and this bothers me. Like, this Daily Beast article is not the first time I've seen somebody use the phrase this way, but like, it always bugs me when people use that phrase as if they think they're referring to some sort of distinctive political position.
Yeah.
All Dirtbag Left means is leftists who traffic in a certain kind of irreverent humor. That's it.
Yeah, it's funny because the left gets painted as champagne socialist all the time, right? You get like, especially in the UK, and I do a show called The Popular Pub with Popular Show with people in the UK, and we have people from Novara on all the time, and they get painted out, sort of the Aaron Bastini and like the Ashikar stuff. It's like it's the champagne socialists. Right. And here we are drinking, our union beers, and and we're just, wearing the sneakers that we have on them. Maybe they're New Balance, maybe they're not. I don't know, right? But we're just, relating to the people we grew up with, and that's supposed to be a bad thing. And that's really interesting to me, because some of us did go to good schools or worse schools or no schools. But the fact is that one thing we have in common is the fact that we want to relate to the people that we grew up with, and I don't think that's a crime.
No, for sure. And yeah, I mean, you sort of can't win either way, right? You have a, you drink champagne and you're a champagne socialist. You drink, was it like the detective in Cape Fear? You drink the Jim Beam mixed with Pepto-Bismol, and then you're a
next patron goal, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, and I agree. Like, a lot of this is about, I mean, I think David makes a perceptive point, that there's a lot of the sort of coding of this has to do with the fact that even at, whatever, I mean, the Daily Beast is not exactly the New York Times, but like journalism in general has, I mean, I guess it's, in a certain sense, it's a, middle class kind of, career in, even if it's, financially less like that now, than it used to be. But perversely, because of that, and because of a lot of other things in the last several decades, like, journalism is a profession that increasingly is staffed by people who come from privileged backgrounds. It used to be something that somebody who came out of the working class could much more easily, go into and sort of, start out as a beat reporter and, kind of make their way. And that's much less true than it used to be. And so I think that a lot of the sort of like weird cultural stories that you see about newsrooms do reflect this fact, right? That that like journalism now is much more professionalized than it used to be. It's,
I was feeling that a lot when Greenwald went to Substack. And people were like talking a lot of shit about that. They're like, oh, he thinks he's too good for an editor. But like, as a writer myself, like, if I had someone else not editing for me and I could just put out what I wanted and make roughly the same or more money as a writer, why wouldn't you, we have to like forget about the norms, the PMC kind of norms within the journalism. Like, if you could write whatever the hell you want and make a living, you're going to say yes. I would say.
Yeah. Well, and it's a weird thing too. Like that, I think that case was really telling because, like, just the how, and I'm like, whatever. Like, I mean, I've had, you know, there are editors that I really like and I thought have made pieces better. You know, there are definitely editors who have made pieces worse. You know, a lot of
times. Why would you come at Boschcar like that? Right?
Yeah, on notice.
Leave Micah alone.
Yeah,
Micah actually rejected a piece I pitched about this Daily Beast piece.
No, it's funny. It's funny because there's twice that Mike is great, and he said to me twice, he's like, David, I want you to write for Jacobin. I just don't like this piece.
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that, Kenzo, because that's very constant with my experience, which is that, and it's really funny, you know, because there are people who have this image of Jacobin, like it's just sort of like constantly sort of, you know, provocatively, you know, courting controversy. And as somebody who has published a fuck ton of articles in Jacobin, right? You know, they have and also had a few rejected. Like, I mean, my consistent experience is that they are pretty allergic to it, right? Like sometimes you can sell them on something that's like going to be like, you know, intra-left controversial, but like that's the exception, you know, like that is not all the lane they're going for. But the fact that even Jacobin has that reputation does speak to what we're talking about journalism. And the Greenwald thing, you know, was super telling about that, because like, okay, whatever you think about this, like, sure, you know, like some people, like, I think editing at its worst can take away a lot of the color and personality of, you know, particular writers to, like, you know, make them fit with their house style. But look, at its best, right? I mean, it definitely serves a good function. You can have like it streamlines a lot of arguments and whatever. But like, and then like whatever you think about this sort of specific thing and like, oh, were those like reasonable changes they wanted to that article or whatever? And, you know, I actually don't, but like whatever, even if you do think that, just the fact that so many people in media who even have kind of lefty views got so pissed at Glenn for like that it was almost like, oh my God, I cannot believe that he would like impugn the sacred honor of editors everywhere. It's like, who are you people?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm friends with a few people who've left The Intercept, and it seems like a great place. I'm glad for the work that they do. But I know people who've left because of Glenn, but also Glenn has left, and I know Glenn as well. And what I would say is that like there's a best place for everybody, and sometimes the best place is your own home. And you know, all of this stuff is like, just keep creating and just try to get your stuff out there. I mean, the irony is the people who ran Vox were just bloggers, you know, and that's a like $1 billion operation over there. And now they're like, well, how dare you go to Substack? I'm like, oh, you were like on Blogspot, and that's how you made your bones. So like, let's get over this.
Well, it's kind of funny. I mean, it feels like you know, there's that Nixon quote, like, if you want something done, find a right-wing exuberant. Like, the liberal version of that is things like Vox or the Daily Beast, which is gatekeeping from a certain side, where it is this blog, like almost like blog kind of like culture, I guess, but like trying to make sure to like consolidate it to the point where, like, you know what I mean, like that they're gatekeeping like the outside forces of it. So like the stories get leaked and quoted from places like that, and for like bigger establishment papers like the New York Times, because they kind of can get away with smearing whoever they want, because there is less of I guess an animus on them to edit things well.
Where was Alexander Reed Ross's editor in this particular issue? And that's what I would like to know, because I mean, there's a few things that pop out to me. And, you know, beyond the sort of like fast and loose dissociation game that, you know, I think that Nazi Germany would find pretty appealing, you know, where you're saying, oh, you live next to Anne Frank, then you're going down too. This is the Reed Ross playbook. And I think that for someone who made his bones going after Nazis, he certainly has made his game out of making associations out of people that he doesn't know, who have not responded to him for emails, and who don't want to talk to him because he does this.
The only person that seems to have responded to him at all was Jimmy Dore, right? Like,
yeah. Well, Jimmy Dore is untouchable. I mean, he's making more money than anybody. Like, I mean, what are you going to do about it? Jimmy Dore is a billionaire.
I will say I do know one person who initially gave a quote for this article because he lied to him about what the article was going to be, and then he managed to get in touch with the Daily Beast and get them to pull the quote. But yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. Like, I mean, this is a train wreck of editing. Also, you mentioned Jimmy Dore, you know, and I did want to say this too, that it's like that. So that this sort of this net that they're trying to cast, you know, for the Dirtbag Left is like, so some of it's sort of usual suspect stuff, like some of it is this sort of podcasts, there are things that are like less directly political than Chapo, but like sort of, you know, somewhat in the same sphere, you know, or like, you know, and definitely a somewhat similar sense of humor. So like I get it, right? You know, your cum towns, your Red Scares, you know, and you know, I'm not saying, look, I mean, you know, I'm nothing bad about either of those. We want, like, Dash has been on this show, and we want to get Stavi on to talk about movies with us. But like, okay, I sort of get it then, but then like, what the fuck is the Jimmy Dore show doing here? Yeah. Because the Dore's entire shtick is absolutely nothing like those other shows. Like that they have that his I mean, even though, you know, he comes out of comedy, I mean, like his entire thing is like
he's like the Dave Rubin kind of comes out.
Yeah. It's like saying yeah, right. It's like saying that Dave Rubin is I don't know, the dirtbag, right? But he has but like the entire Jimmy Dore thing is just completely earnestly yelling at the camera. Like that could not be more different.
Yeah. And the only time the comedian thing gets brought out is when he says something stupid, and then he gets to back it up by being like, "Look, I'm just a comedian over here. Why
are you even listening to me? I'm stupid. I'm a comedian." Yeah, right.
Little critical support for Jimmy Dore. Like, I've gone on record as not liking what he does at all. Yeah. Like, his politics, I think, are just total dog shit. And I hate the fact that he's got such a big platform. But at the same time, like, I'm not trying to cancel him. But in this situation, like, we can't. This is I think something that we have to be kind of delicate about as the left, is like, we can't throw people like him under the bus. I don't particularly like Red Scare either, but I'm not going to throw them under the bus with this, because they're coming for all of us right now. Yeah. You're the guys of like socialism equals fascism.
Yeah, I don't think you should throw you know, Dore under the bus. I think that I think
we should close the door.
Yeah.
I think one of the things. Go ahead, please.
I mean, just like, whatever, cards on the table. I don't think any of this is state secret. Like, I mean, look, like David, right? You know, like, I come out of the Michael Brooks show. I've got the feelings about Jimmy Dore that I have. I don't think anybody doubt or ambiguity about what those feelings are, right? You know, but also, I just wanted to say, right, that like, this idea that there's some sort of entity that's called the Dirtbag Left that like includes like both Cumtown and Jimmy Dore just like makes no sense on its own terms. You know, it's like, what does that mean? Right? Like they have that you have.
Oh, I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine being in the? I mean, just the being in the same comedy club. You know, like the Cumtown guys are all comedians. Like, you know, I've seen Adam, you know, do his stuff. I know about Jimmy Dore's comedy from the Marijuana Logs. Like, just them being in the same comedy club would be surprising. Not let alone in the same like political movement or even the same bar, right? Mm-hmm. Like they just simply wouldn't be in the same bar. And that's the thing, is that I think the underlying crux of the Reed Ross piece is that he's not going to do the homework, nor has but he's mad that he's being ostracized from this, and I think that this goes back to it. I want to get at this because I think the politics of personal grievance are a problem on the left. I think Alexander Reed Ross thinks he's on the left. I think he thinks he is. Now, he may be a narc. He may be the type of person who's gonna he's gonna say, "Oh no, the people next door, they're very bad. You should take them." But ultimately, I think he thinks he's on the left, and I respect that to a certain extent. So if you're listening, Alex, please listen. What I will say is that what he's missing out is that he got dragged on Twitter about 2 weeks ago. I think it was by Felix Biederman of Chapo. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, you could see these reaction pieces come out, and you gotta say, don't be mad online. And I think that if you really understood the Dirtbag Left, the number one key of the Dirtbag Left is never be mad online. And that's what he doesn't get.
No. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, just on a human level, like, you can also just like be better than that. Like I have I mean, Matt Iglesias came very close to calling me a fascist on Twitter. You're
not good friends with Matt Iglesias?
No, I'm not. But when his departure from Vox happened, I looked at it and I said, yeah, I think he's right about this. Like I think he has a legitimate complaint, about how he's treated the organization. Like you can, like it is possible to dislike somebody and also be honest about them. I mean, like that's not even that hard. Mm-hmm. And I think, and so for example, and I know this is a little all over the place, but so I got to leave just a few minutes, I wanted to get this in, that like, so for example, on the Jimmy Dore thing, that like, I think that there are like probably like one of the strongest pieces of evidence in this article, which is not saying much because it's not very strong, was the thing about Jimmy Dore and the Boogaloo boy who. Yeah,
and I have the full like couple minutes clipped for when you get off, I guess.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. So and I think that I think trying to put aside any feelings I might have about Jimmy Dore, I mean, I think at the very least, I mean, I think that was extremely bad, political judgment that they like, and I understand how that could happen. I mean, I don't think you have to believe that Jimmy Dore is like a, deep cover crypto fascist or whatever. I think you could just say like he's somebody who like is, he's like, I don't know. I'll take the, I'll use the Cornell West line when, Cornell West was talking about the intellectual dark web, these aren't the most profound brothers, right? Like, I don't think Jimmy Dore is the most profound brother. And so when he, like, I get how he could see a bunch of standard right-wing libertarian positions being put forward by this Boogaloo guy and say, oh, look, he has a problem with a lot of the things that we have a problem with, and then do like a friendly interview with him. I think that's very bad judgment. Not, by the way, because, it's like, I think it's a, mortal sin to have a terrible person, on your show. I just think if you're going to have them on, you should argue with them about all the crazy shit they think. So it's at least, so that's at least a public service. You should just like be like, oh wow, yeah, that's great, right, good. I'm so glad to hear you say that. But I think the bigger question is, okay, so what's the larger conclusion from this? Like taken seriously, like if we just read everything that says this Daily Beast thing, what exactly are we supposed to think about Jimmy Dore? Mm-hmm. And because so much of this, I think David was saying this earlier, is done through insinuation. It's saying it without saying it. I don't think Reed Ross ever quite spells out what we're supposed to think, right? Yeah. He says, oh, these people, Dirtbag Left, which again just covers many but not all of the people he's talking about. But like these people are flirting, with the far right. It's like, okay, what does that mean? Does that mean that you think that like they're becoming right wingers? Do you think that means that they're like secretly were always right wingers? Do you think that like I really want to know what exactly Reed Ross thinks that we're supposed to to think about all of these people, because otherwise all we have here is just this drawing that's like the stuff that would be like a
it's like the Charlie Day Pepe Silva thing where has all the
It reads like a piece of like a campaign hit piece, because like they use so many weasel words. Like it's the title has the weasel word flirting. Like what does that mean? Like you were saying, Tom, like, and then for one of the impacts that I imagine, and this is because I've seen shit like this happen before, is someone's going to come across this article and they're going to see someone at their job listening to headphones and say, oh, what are you listening to? Oh, I'm listening to Chapo Trap House. And they're going to make a connection in their head that the Boogaloo Boys, Chapo Trap House, Red Scare, Kantbot, which I didn't know what that was before this. That all these things are part of the same movement. Yeah. And then you're going to start thinking, oh, Jimmy that I work, maybe I shouldn't use that. Jason that I work with, likes Chapo. I think, next time we have our implicit bias trainings, I'm going to call him out.
Yeah.
And as a Chapo lover,
and fucking dirtbag,
right? You can't be like, well, actually, I don't think Chapo is racist, because they can always bring up one thing that's tepid, just has a slight connection to something bad, and then you find yourself defending a podcast that you like, that you just want to listen to because you have 45 minutes on your break to listen to what you want to listen to.
Yeah. Well, I actually think that he does kind of. I think kind of like a lawyer, he's kind of building a case in his mind. So the first thing that does have the grain of truth in it at the beginning is that Jimmy Dore had on this Boogaloo Boy guy. I don't think that it's because Jimmy Dore is flirting with the far right, but I think Jimmy Dore probably got duped by this guy, and they're trying to kind of launder the reputation through him. And he has this guy on and is saying, "Oh, we agree with all these things," and they're talking about how they have top bottom like politics, like, you know what I mean, like it's like I don't know, it's like the bottom fighting the top as like that kind of warfare. So Jimmy Dore basically says, oh well, if you guys feel like like they're trying to divide us, and if you guys feel the same way that I do about all these things, we should work together and collaborate, and we should realize that it's the system against us, which is the populism thing, which is trying to bring people to your side. I don't think he's tactful about it, and I think he got duped by this guy. But that is the case that this Alexander Reed Ross guy is making. So he makes it his case at the beginning with that one example, and that's the example that has the grain of truth in it. Then from there he goes, well, actually, this isn't the only example of something like this happening. And then from there, everything else starts to unravel. And he
does the like sleazy journalism thing, where you start with your, the only halfway good example. Yeah. And then so though everything else could just be like vague insinuation, you look at the right angle, it sort of sounds like the first thing. And I guess I'd also say, and whatever. Look, I mean, I think that I don't think the vast majority of people named in this article actually do believe this, right? But like, Dore and other people might, believe some things about like, potential political realignment, parts of the right, whatever, which I think is dumb. We've talked about this recently on the show, but like also just, take a second and have a little bit of a sense of perspective. Like the thing in that comment from Andy that we just put up on the screen, like, I mean, it's a joke, but I mean, it's a good fucking point, right? It's like they have like, okay, so you have like one right winger, who's on the Jimmy Dore show, getting a softball interview, and how many thousands of people from the Bush administration who've been wandered on MSNBC in the last,
or the Daily Beast. Daily Beast has done carried more water for the Lincoln Project, and I'm going to call it Molly Jungfast, who is like hysterical online about like supporting former torturers, and like we have these people who are like laundering like some of the worst war crimes in the history of civilization You know, like from Attila the Hun, you know, like the Bush administration is the worst, and they washed them right through. And now I have to look at Meghan McCain's face every day because people like Molly Jung Fast made it. And I'm sorry, I'm not having it.
Yeah, and this brings up the thing I wanted to throw on screen with the Daily Beast, which is that it's kind of funny they're talking about conspiracy theories because they were kind of the biggest Russia Trump conspiracy theorist outlet. So these are just some of the headlines from the last couple of years. And I went in trying to find like funnier, like stupid ones. These are not funny or stupid. These are fucking terrifying. As Trump gives up on endless wars, Russia and China move in. Will the U.S. sanction
endless wars is in scare quotes?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Will the U.S. sanction allies for doing business with Russia? Russia cheers as Trump moves in Syria. Putin won the lottery. U.S. wards Russia on bounties while Trump cries fake news. Like just literally trying to get us more deeply involved in these Middle Eastern conflicts, and then using the Trump Russia, which is a conspiracy theory. Like as deep as they go in on it is a fucking conspiracy theory. They're taking people from like the national security state that kind of just tell them information and then publishing it as news to try to get us more deeply involved in wars in the Middle East. That's the fucking conspiracy theory I'd be more worried about. So
I'm glad you brought up conspiracy theories because before I toss you the keys and go virtually,
and I get the show canceled for
conspiracy theories.
You know, this is the last thing I wanted to make sure that I brought up, and I'm sure you guys will get into this later. But what a weirdly like something that they'd really try to, you know, to make heavy water of, obviously using TrueAnon as the main example, is people, well, some combination of people on the left or in left adjacent podcasts just like believing, you know, or giving credence to, you know, conspiracy theorizing about the death of Jeffrey Epstein, and then just like all those people not even doing that, just like correctly pointing out that the pedophile global, you know, that the Jeffrey Epstein global pedophile ring existed and is like a well-documented thing.
The Matt Christmas quote was on the money.
Yeah, no, it was, right? So this is the thing. So, like, these are two separate issues, but, like, just to run through them really quickly. Look, did Jeffrey Epstein kill himself? I don't know. I'll certainly say that since I've been following the story a bit, you know, like, up until he killed himself, the morning I woke up, it was like Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. I'll certainly say the first thought that popped into my head was, I'll bet he did, huh? Like, you know, that seemed like way too convenient. Now, sober reflection, did Jeffrey Epstein kill himself? Yeah, maybe, right? Like, I think that, you know, I actually don't think it's implausible that, like, you know, somebody who is in this like massive global limelight as the head of a pedophile ring, you know, might kill himself, right? Like that's not out of the question. That some like guard who is, you know, like that. I understand there's supposed to be precautions against these things, but like that's assuming that everybody's actually doing their job. I think it's possible they just killed himself. Now, if it turned out he did not kill himself, would I be shocked by that? No. But
I think that if he did kill himself, there was probably pressure on him to do it.
Yeah, well, that's entirely possible too. It could be like the Godfather 2 thing.
I think it's also like sympathy for the devil. Like, who killed the Kennedys? It's you and me. You know, I mean, I think that's like the important thing is that, like, you know, like society allowed for this stuff to happen. Yeah. You know, the system allowed for this stuff to happen. It didn't matter how he died. The fact is that him dying was convenient. You know, like, it doesn't actually matter. Like, because it's the best possible route for people who are in that position of power.
Yeah, of course. So this is the other thing I was going to say, that like the whole issue of whether, like, obviously given the circumstances, you know, it's very hard not to have that thought. Did he really kill himself? But you know, even doing the like sober light of day assessment and saying, okay, maybe he did, you know, whatever. Like the whole issue of did Jeffrey Epstein kill himself or not is really a distantly secondary issue, right? Like that's not really like all that, like, all that interesting compared to, like, that's, as they say in journalism, this is burying the lead, right? The lead is that he was, in fact, flying people like Bill Clinton, people like Donald Trump, people like Prince Andrew to Pedophile Island, and that this is incredibly well documented. Alan Dershowitz, Steven Pinker, whatever. Like that, this is all like a matter of record at this point. I mean, I understand that, like, they claim that that while they were on Pedophile Island, they didn't actually do any pedophilia. Make your own judgments about that.
That's the Clinton not inhaling quote.
No, exactly. It is the not.
Look, they tried to get me to be a pedophile, and I said no, and I'll keep saying no.
Yeah. And I'll keep going, saying no every time I go back.
Going on the Lolita Express to visit Pedophile Island, where I continued to say no.
Were there kids on the plane? There were kids on the plane, but I didn't inhale.
I'll tell you, like, if I see kids like out during the school day, I'm like, are they okay?
Yeah.
If I was on a private jet flying to an undisclosed location and I saw kids on that plane, I'd be like, what's going on here? That's the question.
No, exactly. And so, like, the quotes they have, like, from Chrisman, he's saying, like, look, a lot of what QAnon believes is technically true. There was, in fact, a big conspiracy, whatever. Now, where they go from there is obviously insane, right? But they are, that like starting point is not wrong. That is, that, like, not only is that not like a conspiracy theory in itself, not only is that not anything that's like somehow makes them like, right wing by proxy, because QAnon is right wing and QAnon says this and they're saying this. So therefore, whatever, like, by the way, just as like a chain of reasoning, that's like saying that, dogs are mammals and cats are mammals, so cats are dogs. But like having
cancel them both.
yeah. Like just saying that, like, never mind the insane suggestion that saying this somehow makes you right wing or flirting with right wing beliefs or whatever. Like, but just from a perspective of trying to counter conspiracy theories. Like, if that's something you're interested in doing. And if you're not, I don't know why we're even having this discussion. But I mean, if you're interested in countering conspiracy theories, if you're worried about people believing misinformation, conspiracy theories, and you want to counter that, then for God's sake, the worst thing that you could possibly do is tell them that just stating that the Epstein ring existed and was bad is a conspiracy theory in itself.
Well, there's a really great, I mean, I clipped a couple seconds of it. There's a really great, when Chapo had the TrueAnon hosts on, Brace Belden has a quote where he's talking about how we shouldn't see things like Epstein to the far right. And it's true, we shouldn't see these conversations to the far right. And during that episode, they kind of debunked the whole QAnon, Pizzagate, like that whole side of it by saying, like, this feels like controlled opposition. Like, this feels like people who all have connections to the Epstein murders, to Alan Dershowitz, to Roger Stone, like, or the Epstein, like, everything with Epstein. I think it was before he got murdered, or committed suicide, or however you want to,
Sure, whatever happened.
Like, yeah. So before Epstein's death, they're talking about it, and they're talking about how you shouldn't cede it to people like that, and how, like, it's basically controlled opposition, because they all have connections to Trump, they all have connections to Alan Dershowitz, like, they all have connections to people implicated in this. So why wouldn't that be? So why should we cede it to them to kind of make their own narrative about it, when pretty much every like famous, I mean, like, so many like famous institutionally powerful people are implicated in this, which is the story.
No, and exactly. That is which, and again, that's the thing that people should focus on. I mean, it's almost like, I remember a good friend of mine, in Florida, telling me once that, he was really like, the thing that pissed him off most about 9/11 truthers is that, like, people having that discussion all the time distracted them from the actually well-documented, unambiguous conspiracy theory, which is the Bush administration lying about Iraq, and cooking up fake intelligence about WMDs, that's the conspiracy that we know for sure is actually true, right? And you should keep your eye on that. And the same thing I think roughly applies to not that I think it's in the same category as 9/11 trutherism, but that they did Jeffrey Epstein kill himself stuff, and oh my God, look at who was on these fucking planes, going back and forth to Pedophile Island. But look, guys, I really do have to go. I'm now late to the next thing too. So really good to see you, David.
Absolutely, pleasure.
Yep. If I don't know if Heidi's doing stuff like this right now, but if so, we'd always love to have her on. And Kenzo, good to see you, and I will see you again very soon.
Yes.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Take care.
So it's always a pleasure to see Ben. He's great. My wife wrote his foreword for his book, so she's absolutely. But what I was going to say is that interesting thing about people like Reed Ross is that he's more concerned about who's on a podcast than who's on the Epstein plane, and that to me is like what we call, it's like a balance of goods. Like what is the best thing and what is the worst thing? I'm going to say being on a podcast, open discussion of ideas, not as bad. I typically, when I'm hosting a podcast or I'm interviewing with someone, it's usually somebody I agree with, sometimes someone I don't agree with that I can elicit some information out of. But I think that that's an interesting thing. And it makes me worry about sort of the state of education today, because, we're all smart people here who are well-read. And, we think, what is it that people are taking out of books? We're reading a lot of the same texts. I'm sure, if you look at his bookshelf, it's not stuff we don't have on our bookshelf that is making it think that, podcast guests are worse than, Epstein playing guests.
Yeah. I mean, I think that really it's an insular journalism world thing though, as well, because, I don't think that a lot of these PMC people are on the Epstein plane. You know what I mean? Like their bosses their bosses are. I'm sure why they don't report on it as much. But they're not sitting there on that on that plane. What they're concerned about is, I have this position, this class position. I have this position in the journalism industry. And then podcasts come along and they're slowly, people are they're pushing audiences out of us. How do we discredit that? How do we make people realize that these are not serious institutions and that we are a serious institution? And how do we make people realize that their politics are not reasonable politics? Yeah. So they start defining that.
And I think they chose fascism because it's kind of left over from the presidential campaign. There was so much messaging and so much behind voting for Biden is voting out fascism. And it sold a lot of papers. It got a lot of clicks and eyes on videos. Yeah. And so people still want to, there's still capital in that. And this isn't investigative. Ross, definitely just jammed these things together, I think, for the clicks. Yeah. And so, fascism now is creeping up through these podcasts. You're just saying, Forrest, the podcasts are crashing the gates. And, so it's like killing two birds with one stone. We're going to get eyes on this work because, we're bringing up the word fascism and we're making very loose connections to this new medium that's, they don't want to see become more successful. Yeah. And that's, I think that's part of the plan. We just have to fight it at every corner.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because there's no venture capital behind any of these productions. I don't know what you guys are doing, but I don't have any venture capital checks here. And it's one of those things where it's it is hard to replicate true passion. I think it's hard to replicate what is the real thing. There's a reason that DC punk bands did so well, is because at the time they're the real thing. And you couldn't just say, okay, Blink 182, it's the same thing. It's not. It simply isn't. Cool songs, they're great, whatever, catchy, but it's just not the same as going to a Fugazi concert in 96 or whatever. It just isn't. And that's the thing, is that I think these people, they sit at the table, they look at this, they're like, it's gotta be wrong. You know, it's got to be wrong what they're doing over there. It's something. There's something impure. There's something poison in the water. And you think, what is it that they have that I don't have? And it's not that they don't. You know, it's not that they couldn't do this if they really wanted to. It's because it's very hard to do. And the people like Chapo is like lightning in a jar. Michael Brooks show was lightning in a jar. You know, it is very hard. And people can make it. You know, Ben's doing great here, but it takes the kind of work that most people don't want to do. And most people, because we live in this Protestant society, want to think no matter how left they are going to say, if people are making it and I'm not making it, it's not. I'm working. They must not be working, or there must be something wrong with them. There's Russian influence. They're getting funded from Erdogan or whatever, right? But simply it's like sometimes things catch, some things don't. And I think that this producer society where we're all producing, we're all tweeting, we're all doing the things, people start to think maybe there's something else going on, and you just don't know.
All right, so someone says, can someone explain to me what actually happened? Who went on one podcast? So do you guys want to just break this article down?
Sure.
Kind of bit by bit.
Yeah.
Also, I think on your point, I think that on both of your points, I guess, I think also the word fascism is so illy defined including like if you read any any authors that study fascism, like historically, like they'll say like we don't know which things are fascism. Like we can't really give you a working definition of it, which I mean is understandable because there's been so many different movements kind of intertwined that have been related, but like and have kind of had similar elements but haven't been the same movements. But like fascism is an easy boogeyman in that case, because you know what I mean? They're like is it? But it's been used that way since World War II. You know what I mean? Like
and also like I think some people who are called fascists are like other things. They're like neo-reactionaries, which is kind of a postmodern movement and very strange. I know that like this Cantbot character who was on Red Scare and I think some other podcasts, that the guy, he's like, he's like a smart, nerdy guy. I don't like what he says or anything, but he's like kind of clever and people are catchy. I know that he's blocked me because I told him to go outside. I said, he said he was talking about like physicality and like how it's the true fascism, and I was like, I don't know, man, like go chop some wood or something, like just go for a walk, like just taking care of yourself is not fascism.
Although I'm wary of any journalist. I'm wary of like any journalist who specializes in fascism as like their focus. I mean, because of the fact it's hard to define. And like, if you look at Sarah Kendzior right now, who is being laden with lots of praise about her anti-fascist work, 6-7 years ago was doing the same shit to Jacobin, trying to put it under the bus. And she actually wrote an article smearing Jacobin where she quoted from white supremacist newsletters. Like, it's
Julia Yaffe was photographed with what's his name, the guy with the side hair, who's clearly a Fed. What's his? Yes, Richard Spencer, clearly a Fed. Richard Spencer, because if he wasn't,
I didn't think you said Twitter. Fed for a second.
He's absolutely. He lives in Virginia. He lives in Virginia. I thought you said Richard Spencer, absolutely a Fed. I mean, I'm
University of Chicago is enough for me.
That's what I'm saying. No, exactly. Do you know that Richard Spencer apparently went to school with? I think he supervised Stephen Miller at Duke in a master's program. That. Which is, but no, I mean, I'm sure I can't say whether or not that's true, but I just think that anybody who's in a platform that long who isn't kicked off probably maybe is protected in some way. But what I would say is that, like, you're right. Like you see these people, they're comfortable when they're at the bar. And, like I lived in Washington, D.C. for a long time, and I saw a lot of people at bars together that you would never expect. And it's probably why the government doesn't work well. It's because people who shouldn't agree are more than likely to, have drinks together and then say, screw the people.
All right. So you guys ready to break this down? I guess,
sure.
Piece by piece.
Yeah.
All right. I'll try to be done with this stream by 9. Cause I'm sure everyone has stuff to do, but, so the first one that, is the Jimmy Dore thing, which I think is the grain of truth, I guess, that he builds this whole thing on. So I thought just like a couple minutes of this Boogaloo Boy interview would be
But you're going to do it anyway. So you reach out to the Black Lives Matter. You reach out to Antifa. The Boogaloo boys reach out to Antifa. The Black Lives Matter. You march. You're anti-war. You're for peace. You're against racism. You're against police brutality. What would be some other big things?
Pro sex work decriminalization, legalize all drugs, end all the wars, close the ICE detainment camps.
Where did you get that from? Why are you against? You're against the ICE detainment camps?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the border things, I'm more of an open borders guy. But even looking at it from a conservative viewpoint, if you got to deport people, then deport people. Why are you holding people in camps? Why are you holding people in these horrible, uncomfortable positions? If you don't want them in the country, then deport them. Why are you doing this? It's awful. It's inhumane. And if this was going on at any other time period under any other presidency, people would be burning the country down over it. Never again is what we said. But we're putting people in camps again.
So people, well, I want to say who are your political opposites, but they're not, because the whole point of your thing is that we have a lot of agreement. And so what I've said on this show is that, the problems we're facing right now aren't left-right issues. They're oppressive issues that affect all of us. And so we have to fight those first so we can get back to fighting a left-right issue. That's what I look for. That's almost a luxury, being able to fight Democrats, Republicans. Right now, we know there's one party of war, one party of Wall Street, one party of a big pharma and health insurance companies and fossil fuel companies. They own all, and Silicon Valley, by the way, which is why we're all being censored. Yep. So that, to me, that's the bigger problem right now that affects left, right, center, middle. It's a class war that we're in right now, right? You feel that it's a class war?
Absolutely, and that's where we butt into it with conservative groups a lot, because we're very anti-police, and they're like, "Why do you not support the police?"
I don't think we have to hear more than that, but
no.
That's just like a couple minutes.
I could see, I think, how can I say this? Like, I know people who were Bernie Sanders voters, and this is like, people are going to hate me for saying this, who thought the Boogaloo thing was cool because they're like, oh, I have guns. I like, left-wing things. And then I said, then I had like a 1 minute conversation with them. They're like, okay, I don't. Right. These are people from like, where I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. They're like, okay, it took 1 minute, like, right. But I think one of these, the issue is that a lot of us are ceding our friends' politics to the internet. Yeah. And I think 99% of the problems with like organizing around socialism or unions or anything like that is like, we don't talk to each other. And like, we're talking to each other now. And I think that's great. Like I love you guys, but like, you got to talk to like your neighbor who's a little weird, and like, like you just let them know, like, hey, I'm here. I'm like this. It's okay. You like me. We drink beer. It's fine, right? Like, I like cheesesteaks or like, tofu, whatever.
Most people have kind of indecipherable politics. I mean, Jimmy Dore kind of says that in this, and he's right about that. I think most people don't really have, like, most people aren't ideological. Most people don't consider themselves left or right, and you have to be able to talk to people, because I think that there is a lot of agreement. Now, I don't think that anything with that is the problem with this interview that Jimmy Dore does. He's clearly either been duped by or is laundering a very specific group in this case, and has found someone. Honestly, I bet this guy reached out to him and said, I'm a big fan, and Jimmy Dore was like, oh, I'll have you on because you're a fan, which right? seems like that's Jimmy Dore's like, but number one, it seems like he's never met a libertarian in this video. Like, he's like, you're against the ICE detainment camp. Like, have you really never like met a libertarian that like is like for all these things, but like then has some very, very like reactionary views on, well, not even reactionary, like right-wing views on like certain corporate interests or like capitalism.
Yeah. So, it's funny. I know people from where I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. It went for Obama once and then for Trump twice. Right. So it's like one of those weird swing districts. And I go to their house. They're cool. They're like, hey, I really just got into like micro dosing, for my mentality. And then you'll see the Jordan Peterson book on their desk. you know, and you're like, I don't understand like what this is, what's going on here, you know? And I think you're right. Like, I think the problem with, you know, the way the Daily Beast works is everybody should know their politics because they went to the right school, they make the right decisions. But like a lot of people are just like busy, stupid, or like, you know, just they don't understand because, you know, they've seen neoliberalism. You know, they've like lived in Chicago, for example, you know, where it's like all Democrats and they're like, hey, what's happening here? I'm not getting what I need out of this city. And they're like, you know what? The right wingers are right. And, you know, because I think the left has seeded a lot of conversations, like this is where we're at. And this isn't helping.
Well, it's also, I mean, the point that I made the first day that I was on as like a producer, like the day we went live on air, like, and I've made this point a bunch of times since, is that when like the Democratic Party and like the American left, like not like us, like our version of the left, but like the liberal left, I guess, when they seed worker issues and they focus on social issues, a lot of workers are reactionary people. Like a lot of all of us are reactionary people. You know what I mean? Like in our personal politics or something. Like, because being reactionary isn't something that, you know, it's not something that is a coherent political philosophy. It's something that comes from personal interactions. It comes from, you know, like the values you claim to have. It comes from your worldview. And when it stops being about material issues, people get suckered into like conservative, like socially conservative, reactionary like talking points, because they're like, all right, well, you know, if people aren't doing anything for me, this makes sense then. And so a lot of people vote for Trump for reasons like that. And being able to like, I don't know, being able to talk to those people and say like, you know what, like I agree that this, like nothing is working in the system right now, but there is a way that's not like a reactionary far right or libertarian view of things. Like I feel like libertarians are someone who's like, I mean, I don't want to make a Dan Crenshaw joke, but someone who's had like an eye poked out and they can only see out of like the right eye. Where everything the government does is bad, and then there's like, you know, the left eye, everything corporations do is bad, and there's like an intersection where it's like, you know what, this system isn't working because both like our government apparatus and our corporate apparatus are so intertwined at this fucking point that like capitalism is seeped into everything. And like you can't just have one eye open. You can't be focused on corporate power or government power and not see those links. Those things have to be like decoupled, and one, like they have to be protecting workers on top of everything else. Otherwise, the vast majority of the population just gets left behind and left to whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
I think that also something we should look at is the context that Jimmy Dore had the Boogaloo person on. It was very reactive. It started with you know, the force the vote thing, which we don't need to get into, but Jimmy Dore was really pissed off, and he used the example of the DSA as being like a foil to the force the vote coalition, if you want to call it that. And so he had a bunch of people on that were like socialists who were anti-DSA, someone from the Socialist Equity Party, someone from, I believe, the World Socialist website, like all of the, I think they're the same, but, you know, all of these kind of like, you know, sectarian, very anti-DSA people. And then I think to further his point, that was the reason why he had the Boogaloo person on to say, hey, look, people are organizing with the working class and they're not into, you know, AOC and all that. And for, you know, Forrest, I do agree that there's like a kernel of truth there, because I think what Jimmy Dore is doing is dangerous. But I think like what's implied in the way this was written is that it is part of some sort of conspiracy and he's kind of spearheading it. And I just don't see that from him. I see him as being like, he's from Cicero. I know his type. He keeps talking about how all of his family are Chicago cops. He's a guy you meet at a barbecue.
Fucking sellout.
Will talk your ear off and just be full of shit. And the last thing he heard that was interesting to him, he'll repeat. And that's what I see in Jimmy Dore. And
man, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is a very accurate description. Like, I'm from a working class area. Like, you all know that guy. He talks fast. He's pretty funny.
Yep.
Half the time you want to pop him, like, you know, like, and you're like, I'm gonna see him tomorrow. I'll probably like him tomorrow. I need to walk away. You know, like, it's, you know, if he offers to buy a shot, maybe you'll take it, but maybe you'll get stuck there. You know,
it also seems like Jimmy Dore is very reactive to people that show him praise. Like,
Yeah.
his big problem with AOC is that AOC didn't want to come on his show.
Yeah.
His big problem with Bernie, that like made him endorse Tulsi Gabbard more than anything else, was that Bernie didn't come see him when he was in California. Like, he admitted that. Like, Bernie was in California. They reached out to him. The Bernie campaign was like, I don't think this is a good idea. So he's like, well, I'm going with Tulsi Gabbard then.
Yeah.
Like, ironically enough, you know, railing against like liberals and grievance politics, like personal grievance politics, like informing your worldview. Like, it seems like more than anybody else on the fucking internet, Jimmy Dore's entire thing is personal grievances.
Yeah.
By the way, anytime one of you guys like need to get off, like you can. I'm just
You know.
Well,
one of the things I would say is and I'll stick around for a little bit, but what I would say is that because I'm enjoying myself, I'm just for the listeners, I'm in rural Newfoundland, which is at the furthest edge of North America. So it's been a little later here for about 2 hours, but you know, I think one of the things that I would that's funny, it's true. The funny thing is that I think for people is that as you go through the references get more esoteric. You know, like you get Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore's got millions of viewers, blah blah. Then you get Red Scare, okay. And then they just have like a Matt Crispin quote that's like very reasonable. You know, it's like both parties are not fulfilling their civic duty, and like, oh, this is really bad.
We can kind of go through these kind of talking points one by one. I mean, so that's kind of what he's using for the Jimmy Dore one. And then he kind of does some COVID stuff, which honestly I don't give a fuck about. Like, having somebody on to be like, oh, COVID like isn't a big deal. Like the World Health Organization lied about their mask policy. The
mayor of Chicago said that, and now is forcing schools to open. Like, the liberal establishment is not that serious about coronavirus.
They're only serious about coronavirus when they can weaponize that discourse against somebody. I don't know. So that part doesn't really. I mean, it's whatever. But so. Going on from there, they do a little bit of the RT, like Russia smearing, because it's fucking Daily Beast and they have to. And then the next thing that they do is the Red Scare stuff, which I'll let David kind of, break down if he wants to, like some of it.
So it's interesting. Like, so the interesting thing about Red Scare is that, like, the people, I don't know them that well, but I do know both the hosts. They both have like genuinely left-wing politics, but they are contrarians in like this very like poke you in the eye kind of way. And I think that's part of their charm. I think they brought more weirdos probably over to somewhere in the left than they've moved anybody over to the right. I can assure you of that. But one of the things is that, like, they're allergic to like orthodoxy. And so they'll have people on that maybe are like less desirable in left spaces. And like that's their business, I mean, they're largely a gossip sort of operation that talks about pop culture that has a left component, and also, like, I think there's like a certain type of people who collect sort of weird intellectuals. Like, I have friends who are like, their politics are abhorrent, but like they don't have any power, so it doesn't matter. So so that's the interesting thing. Now, I think the thing is that online, I think that we're all subject to this because, like, one, we would like to have power, right? Mm-hmm. And two, we like to people think that we have power, and we can really over project like what actually the political impact of people are. Like, so a person like this Cantbot character has, like, I don't know, 30,000 followers, right?
Sorry.
Well, what does that actually mean?
Hold on.
No problem.
Oh, I was just I was I was trying to pull up a clip and it started playing.
no problem. But like, what does that actually mean? Like, are these people who vote? Are these people who are going to go out and stop unions? Are these people who are going to, like, go kill, create a, have an incel murder or whatever? I don't know. I think these are people who probably would have been on something awful forums instead. So, I mean, it doesn't really matter. So it makes you really wonder, like, like, had Tumblr not like put censorship up, will we even have half the politics we have on Twitter?
I wanted to play for the
I forgot about their icon.
Yeah. So the Steve Bannon interview they did, I think is a perfect example of, like, sure, cultivating relationships with, I mean, every single fucking mainstream, establishment publication interviewed Steve Bannon after 2016. But I think this is a good way that you can kind of cultivate something like this and then kind of lead into like to the death knell. You know what I mean? Like lead into something that totally blindsides the person after having like the first half hour, like, just kind of picking their brain for what their ideas are, which is something we should be doing anyway, because, listening to like, how can you counter reactionary arguments if you don't know what they are? You know what I mean? Like maybe that doesn't mean always having those people on uncritically on a podcast, but like still, like you should be paying attention to their arguments so you can, you know what I mean, like debunk them if that's what you're interested in doing. But I think this is the perfect example of kind of like after like a somewhat friendly 30 minutes, like how you can kind of land a death blow on somebody.
Like symbolic or rhetorical battles by and large. In the Errol Morris doc, American Dharma, you said that if we don't redistribute the wealth, there will be a revolution as night follows day. You said that you were on a mission to remake the Republican Party into a workers' party. And I do want to ask you that because it seems like the kind of standard issues that dominated left discourse versus right discourse have flipped. But right now we're talking about a record 6.6 people filing for unemployment in a system that can barely even sustain the phone calls, the emails. As Bernie has reminded us virtually every debate, there are 87 million uninsured or underinsured in the United States. Here's the question for you. Do you support single payer healthcare?
I support I came out of a system. My dad was a lineman for the phone company before he got into lower level management. And, we had our healthcare by the phone company. I still think, just given the efficiency and all that the best way to do this is still through companies and through private insurance. I just think it's a more effective way. We have to get a system in which everybody's covered. We can't have what they call the donut hole or the gap. And so somehow we have to strap together that system. We have to have a system in which everybody has coverage, and it has to be real coverage. It can't be where the deductibles are so high that effect is just catastrophic insurance.
But listen, I'm not trying to hardball you, but with all due respect, I mean, how do you achieve that through private companies and private interests?
I just don't think I'm not a believer that in Medicare for all that we could at the time afford it. Although now that we're talking about, we have had a change. We have had a change in the last couple of weeks in that now we've got, and when you talk about the trillions of dollars that we've put to work at the Federal Reserve and the trillions of dollars are going to take the bridge, maybe that changes it on the other side of this. I'll be honest with you. I don't know. And part of that is what is taken on this pandemic to solve it. This concept of modern monetary theory, which is Piketty's way, because I keep saying that if you look at AOC, and I take her as an example, if you look at the team around her, which I observed, they were very focused on things like World War II for climate change. In other words, not just whole of government, but whole of society mobilization to solve something. And that if you looked at Green New Deal and Medicare for All, it was really about this whole concept of modern monetary theory, which is essentially QE2 for the masses, right? Or QE for the masses. And I think that's all up. So I think, to me, all of it's got to be rethought, given the fact of the massive government intervention we've had in the situation. I mean, tantamount to what Vice President Pence and President Trump said the other day, we're essentially, I think, heading to some sort of single payer of Medicare for all. If you just heard what they had to say the last couple of days, that nobody's going to fall under the net here in any type of corona coverage. So I think that's all to be worked out. And I say that as somebody that's has not thought about this a lot, but am I thinking about it given the fact of the scale of the economic bridge that we're having and of what we're doing with the Federal Reserve to back companies with direct loans, that the whole system's got to be rethought.
But yeah, so it ends up with him sounding completely fucking incoherent.
Yes.
Trying to save whatever populist thing, like mystique that he's built around him. When basically, I mean, he goes on to admit that he's basically like a standard Democrat when it comes to healthcare. Like he sees like a welfare, like a ACA / like Medicare expansion system taking control of people that kind of fall through. But like, then he's like, oh, well, it's going to be 2-tiered, but like, like, I don't know how you can get around that, which Medicare for all is how you get around that. But, but like, then he's like, well, I'm a right-wing capitalist. So, I don't like, so he just starts stammering because, I guarantee you, being on every single establishment media channel, they've asked him a million times, like, are you a racist? Are you a fascist? Like, well, like, you know what I mean? Like, talk to him about China and like, kind of like the way that he feels about it, like things he's all had counters for. But I guarantee you, nobody asked him, do you support Medicare for all? Yeah. Do you support single payer healthcare?
Actually, that really deflates his populist bona fides. Like, that's the critical part. I think that, like, I do a show called The Popular Show where we actually talk about populism. And we had Peter Hitchens on, right? And Peter Hitchens is anti-mask, or he's not anti-mask, he's like anti-lockdown, right? But like, we actually discussed some of the left sort of perspectives on lockdowns, how they affect people, what should we be doing. And what we discovered in that discussion was like, you could use him as a foil against the right, where like people are not providing support, right? They're not doing all these things for these workers. And we juxtaposed our opinions around that. And it actually was an interesting standpoint that you could use to actually get a left-wing opinion across. And I think that if we're going to cede ground in these ways, you could use, when you play chess, you could use the other players' pawns for your own objectives. And like, I think that's something on the left, we have to play a little more chess and a little bit less checkers.
Well, I mean, Steve Bannon's trying to play chess with our pawns. You know what I mean? Like,
he is.
But then, a simple question like this deflates his entire thing. Like,
well, he started out doing the one thing that I hate as someone who, like, I've written messaging for labor leaders. And it's every time someone uses being a worker as an identity, a little part of me dies when people will say, like, they'll give their opinion on the labor movement or on work or anything or employment. And they'll start with, well, you see, my father worked in the steel mill, like the mayor of Chicago, her father, I believe, worked in a coal mine. Like, everyone has these stories. And like, I'll tell you one thing about my parents, love them to death, not socialists. My dad taught me, we grew up poor, and he said, look, money's going to make you a lot happier. Find a way to make a lot of money. That's how I was raised. Yeah. And he was, a working class guy, he still is to this day. So that just drives me up the wall. But like, they did, when they interviewed him, they did something that the others, like, you all were saying they don't do, is they pushed him a little bit, because he gave the boilerplate political message, which is something that he's not supposed to be known for. But they could have stopped there and just like, oh, okay, you're a worker. You have the identity of a worker. We're just going to trust what you had to say. But they did push the Medicare for all. I have to give them credit.
No, I mean, this like my father was a blah 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 in Scranton. And I'm from the Scranton area, so I know that story. It's my story, right? And and I see that, and I'm like, okay. Being from Pennsylvania or being from Chicago, like, these stories, like these, like, my father grew up and he worked on a dirt farm, or he raised dirt, and then he went to the dirt mines and he mined the dirt. And you're like, okay, but what about you, bro? Like, what's your opinion?
Every charter school asshole
sent it out. Everybody had dirt. Everybody in town.
Yeah, it's like we ate dirt pies. My mom and my peepaw, they made the dirt pies. Like, it's come on. It's like, what is your experience? And like, what did you do with that person in the hot tub that melted Steve Bannon? Like, that's the question I want to know. I don't know if you know about this, but
I was listening to the true, like, the TrueAnon thing where they were talking about that. And it was it had to do with Epstein somehow was involved in that too, right?
And the other thing is, like, and I just did a show with Karen Geyer, who I think, Kenzo, I think you're friends with Karen, are you? Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, and we talked about the Oprah interview, and you're like, did they not bring up? How did they not bring up Epstein? How are you going to sit at Prince Andrew's table? But that's the thing that.
What are you hiding, Oprah?
But Kenzo, you're right, and I want to hear more about what you're saying, because that is like the biggest. It makes my stomach churn whenever I hear that.
Every charter school asshole, when they give a speech, their parents were union teachers.
Yeah.
And so nothing, no decisions they can make would ever go against the union.
Yeah.
In fact, the staff don't need unions because the CEO of the charter school network, their parents were in unions.
Yeah.
And all it is using identity politics, but like subbing in, worker. And people, I think it's a way of getting around actual material arguments for labor theory of value. Like, actually being materialist is by like, if we can even reduce unions, which Democratic politicians love reducing unions to identity and to like, someone in a hard hat and, someone else who's, or a cop that they love to lump in cop unions with real unions, as I'd say. And it's just so disingenuous. And I'm glad to see that they didn't let him get away with that.
And when the axe came to the forest, the tree said, "His handle is made of us."
Well, I know you guys both have to get off. So I guess we can end it on that note. This has been fun though. I definitely want to. I mean, I'm going to be talking to Kenzo again on Sunday and then on Monday. We should do another one of these. Like, there's definitely more to break down, but I know you guys have kids and a life to get back to.
I didn't know you had twins, David. That's
so I have a boy and a girl, assigned at birth, and it's really great. They're both standing up. They're both very vocal. We're here in lockdown in rural Newfoundland, so we don't have a lot of help. So I know I have to get up very early, but they're great. They sleep through the night, and I fed them a nice meal of moose this evening. So
nice.
All right. Well, I think Ben is going to be streaming again on this channel tomorrow, doing his like Philosophy Friday stream, and on Saturday we're going to be releasing just the Thaddeus Russell debate in its entirety. I mean, it's already been on the channel, but we're going to release it as a clip. And then on Sunday, they're doing the debate breakdown stream. I don't know. I'm definitely not good at signing off from these yet, but all right. So,
and then Sunday, you're going to be on my show too, Forrest.
Yeah.
6
You got to send me the topics for that.
We usually finalize them the Saturday, but if I have, I'll send you what I got so far.
All right. Any last thoughts?
Left is best.
Yeah.
Left is still best, no matter what the Daily Beast says.
That's right.